Good. Very, very honored to have Jim Cathcart. He's flown all over the world, spoken all over the world in multiple industries. Very, very blessed and fortunate to have you here. And my neighbor now that he's in Austin, Texas, and we're in San Antonio. So let's give it up for Jim Cathcart, How to Build an Empire in the Speaking Business. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. How many of you are already speakers? You're active in some way as a paid speaker. Excellent, excellent. I've been a professional speaker for 46 years. And you can still stand? Yes. I started in speaking as a trainer ages ago. And I just loved doing training, facilitating dialogue and teaching courses. And then I saw a motivational speaker and I got excited about that, and I decided that's the path I was going to follow. And so I built a career that has now gone on for a great deal of time and gone through every kind of stage and phase that you can imagine. I've been partners with other speakers and other collaborators in businesses of different types. I've been just a keynoter doing only motivational talks. I've been a sales trainer. I've been a consultant. I've been a trusted advisor working as a mentor and a coach. I've done co-authored books, collaborations, video series. So all of those things that we all do, I've done exclusively for a period of time throughout my own career. And so when I talk about professional speaking, I'm not talking about standing in front of a crowd and doing a motivational speech only. I'm talking about all the various iterations of what we do. How do we get our message out to people in a way that they're willing to pay for it and that they feel like they got more value than they spent in order to receive the value, okay? So I'm going to show you a number of slides here. This one, let's assume that came from Jack Canfield because he's the first person I heard say it this way. It's not called the best book list. It's called the best seller list. That's right. So when you have a book, you have a beginning, but you don't have a business. It's only a business when you create a business around it, when you turn that book into a business by marketing it or giving it away, but using it to stimulate the next transaction and the deeper relationship and the broader commitment from them to you and you to them, okay? So Michael came graciously to the book launch for my latest book with Dennis Madden, a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, High Rev for Small Business. And Dennis is a 10-year client. So for 10 years, I worked for his association, which was an automotive association. I wrote articles for their magazine, Gears Magazine, the Automatic Transmission Rebuilders Association. People say there's an yes, there is. And one day they asked me to sit in on a best practices meeting. And I sat in on the meeting and they said, you know what, we got so many good ideas from you. Would you be interested in writing an article for our magazine, Gears Magazine? Sure. So I wrote an article for their magazine. They said, the article went over really well. Would you be interested, if we paid you, doing an article every month for our magazine? Sure. So I became a regular contributor and have been for more than 10 years now. They said, our people have gotten to know you through your articles and they kind of like you. We'd like to buy, would it be okay if we bought several boxes of your books? Let me think about that. Yeah, and gave them away to our management attendees at our annual expo in Las Vegas. I said, yeah, I could, yeah, okay. Twist my arm. Yeah, I'll let you buy my books. So they bought a bunch of books and they said, well, Jim, we've got your books and we're getting ready to go to Vegas. Are you open this weekend? I said, well, I'm not committed to any engagements. Well, if we paid your way, would you come over to Vegas and just, sign some books, shake some hands, and we'll, have a nice dinner, and then you can fly home the next day? Sure. So I go to Vegas, and they say, well, Jim, since you're here, you want to say something? So I got up and I shared a story with the group, and it got a good response, and I went out and signed autographs and shook hands and went to dinner with them. And they said, you know, Jim, at Expo you went over really well. Would you be interested in being the keynote speaker for next year's Expo in Washington, D.C.? Sure. So they hired me full fee, keynote speech, and they said, by the way, you know every speaker that's ever breathed. You know, can you tell us who we should pick for the rest of our program in Washington, D.C.? I said, yes. In fact, I have a couple of people that are definitely car crazy like I am, and they would be ideal. And so I called my friends, and they booked my friends. So I'm earning brownie points, you know, like out of the park. And my friends are thrilled to be getting a fully paid gig with no marketing. And we go to Washington, D.C., and I say, well, look at all the exhibitors in your expo. They're selling from a booth, and most people that sell from a booth don't sell from a booth. In other words, they're lame at doing it. How about I do a briefing for the exhibitors and just teach them some boothmanship, you know, some selling tips, selling tips for an expo floor. And they said, well, that's a great idea. So there's a little extra fee for that, of course. And so I've got a little extra fee for recommending and curating the other speakers. I've got a little extra fee for that. And so this went really well. It goes on for a while. They said, we've got an office staff, about a dozen people, and I'd really like it if you could come in like 2 or 3 times a year and teach them just basic business skills and personal skills that would make them more effective. Could you do that? Now, note, I lived at the time in Thousand Oaks, California. This was Oxnard. So it's just up the road, like, 15, 20 miles. So it's an easy drive for me. Yeah, I can come by and train your staff once in a while. So there's a fee for that, of course. And then they said, we love the way you think, and we think better when we're with you. So how about, like 3 times a year, we, the executive team, and you just go to lunch somewhere and just brainstorm next stages in our future. Cool, I'll do that. And then they said, why don't you just give us an annual amount and we'll put you on a monthly, salary on this thing and it'll go. 10 years. 10 years. Now this, where did it start? Started with me being on a radio station as a free guest in Ventura. Coach Ron Tunick, his drive time show. So I was on Coach's show as a guest one day, and just did the little interview, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and I was off the air. He said, that went well. Would you like to come back? Sure. So the next time I came into the studio, the first one was remote. And when I got in the studio, we hit it off. And he said, you want to be my co-host? And I said, what do you mean? Be partners? And he said, no. Just come in occasionally and just be with me for the whole show. And we'll banter back and forth and you'll share some ideas. I said, sure. So we did that. And that led to more. And then finally he said, I've never taken a vacation because of the show. Would you like your own show, Drive Time, for 2 weeks? And I said, well, yeah, for free, of course. And of course, one of the new advertisers was me advertising me. And so I did that, and I called all my buddies, and I said, hey, I want you as a guest on my show. And they said, well, how cool is that? So now I'm calling all these Hall of Fame speakers and best-selling authors I know from around the country and interviewing them on the show, and I'm having a blast. And the people I know in the Ventura County and LA County area are listening to the show and saying, hey, I heard you on the radio. So it's just growing and growing. And then one day, one of the advertisers, Donnie Cacciamizzi from Ventura, owned a transmission shop, and he said, would you sit in on a best practices committee meeting? If we paid you a small fee, would you sit in and offer some ideas? So that's where it all began. But you got to take it back to getting the radio show. That's where that began. So over here, I've got a 10-year client and a co-author in a book, and all kinds of things have grown out of that. But let's just walk back down the road. So here we are, best practices meeting I'm sitting in, just offering observations. How'd I get that? Radio show. Well, how'd I get the radio show? My dear friend, fellow past president of the National Speakers Association, that's what this little microphone pen is about, Terry Paulson had been a guest on the show, and he said, hey, Jim, I guested on a show the other day. You'd probably enjoy this. So he recommended me, and that's how I got it. So how'd I get that? Well, I got involved in the National Speakers Association in 1976. 1976, I was at the JC's, the Junior Chamber of Commerce, national headquarters, and I was the guy in charge of leadership training programs. They had 356,000 members. They were huge. It was the peak of the baby boom in society, and they were serving the baby boomers. And so I'm the guy in charge of leadership training for 356,000 people, and a guy that I had met, Don Hudson from Memphis, was one of the founding members of a group called the National Speakers Association. And I said, well, that's interesting. What do you do? And he told me about it. And there were only 200 members at the time. Now they're worldwide, thousands of members. And so I joined in 1976 for like $60, which was a hard decision. You know, that's a lot of money. Okay, I'm in, you know, and I joined. They had 200 members. I got really actively involved. Ended up on the national board of directors, ended up as their national president, became the guy who created the professional education program upon which all of NSA's worldwide professional education is built. And I've received every award that they give in the field of professional speaking. Let that sink in for a second. You've what? Honestly, I have. I've been honored to receive every major award given to professional speakers basically on earth. Wow. Where'd that start? Well, I was a natural. Dad was a telephone repairman. Mom was a homemaker. I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas. I was clearly silver spoon, you know, I mean, well, maybe it was stainless. But anyway, when I started out, I had no idea about all this. Now, I want to show you something here. I'm going to run through a bunch of slides. So I'm going to sit down, and I'd like you to focus on the screen, because I'm going to show like 30 slides or so in maybe 2 minutes. All right? And I just want to put in context, what is professional speaking? All right? So these are some of my books. I've written 23 books. I've published 23 books. I've written 25 books. And I've got more to go. And I'm looking for co-authors, by the way, because I'm going to re-release a lot of these other ones. So, what is public speaking to you? Whether it's paid or not, what is public speaking? Let's look. It's speaking at universities and teaching and lecturing, right? It's being involved in education, you know, getting your degrees and your credentials and helping others do that. By the way, at age 75, I got my bachelor's degree in business, an honorary degree from High Point University. I don't have an earned degree. I have college textbooks that I've written that are being taught by others. I'm a professor in the executive MBA program at California Lutheran University School of Management, but I don't have a college degree. And I've done a great deal in the field of education at the higher levels, but don't have an earned degree. I got an honorary degree because of the work I had done in all of these areas. You know, here's public speaking, right? That's my home studio, well equipped. There are 3 guitars in the room, and got my green screen and everything else. I'm a co-host of a PBS show here in Dallas on KERA called McQuestion, been on the air for 33 years. And that's public speaking. This is public speaking. My TED Talk is now at 2.6 million views. And the topic's how to believe in yourself, and it's 8.5 minutes long, and I thought I did about a 7 on a 1 to 10 scale. And it went viral. Wow. Not because of the quality of the performance, not because of the fame of the performer, because of the appeal of the title and the length of the show. So if you're aspiring to a TED Talk, let those 2 sink in. I got the Golden Gavel Award from Toastmasters International, and just month before last, I was the keynote speaker for the 3rd time at Toastmasters World Convention. This one was in Nashville, Tennessee. Wow. I don't know that they've ever brought anybody back that much. Let this sink in. My first keynote speech for Toastmasters International Global, not local or state, was 1995 in San Diego. And then in 2001, I got the Golden Gavel Award, and so I was the main platform in Anaheim. And then I got a call the other day, and Daniel Rex, who's the executive VP of Toastmasters, he said, Jim, we'd like to have you back. Would you do a keynote for us this year? And I said, well, it's only been 21 years. You sure you want me? He said, yeah, we want you back. 21 or 27 years from the first time, 21 years from the last time. So how do you get staying power? Just make sure you're not focusing on giving a speech. Focus on serving your audience. Focus on being a resource to them. I joined NSA, as I told you, and the higher level of that is receiving the Cavett Award, which is named after the founder of NSA, Cavett Robert, and the CPAE, which is Council of Peers Award for Excellence. They've got a ring that goes with that. It's the Speaker Hall of Fame Award. And I'm the guy on the far right over there. I've received both of those awards over the years. So if you aspire to that, I can tell you how to get to that. That's public speaking. This is public speaking at the Jonathan Club in LA. This is public speaking. It's a small little seminar for guitar makers, luthiers. And I was there teaching the art of marketing and the marketing of art, which was basically relationship selling for people that make guitars. Okay. This was speaking at the NSA convention, a couple thousand people. You know, some of them are casual, like today, the way I'm dressed. Some of them are formal and very elegant. Sometimes you're receiving awards. All that's public speaking. I'm actually a Toastmaster. Even though I'm not a member, I have mastered toasts. This is at my friend Ray Stendel's wedding. And so, you know, that's public speaking, right? And so is being the officiant that's doing the wedding, right? That's public speaking. And speaking in other countries. This one's in Poland. Speaking in China through interpreters. That's Kitty, my favorite interpreter in all of China. This is working with my interpreters before the speech to explain why the punchlines are funny. Because if you don't tell them why it's funny, it may not be funny in their culture. Right? So they may need to rework that from how you say it. Maybe it's just leading meetings. Maybe it's serving on a panel. Maybe it's, you know, being celebrated as the big deal for the day, right? Or standing on a platform where you're virtually deified. I mean, there's every level of speaking, asking questions from the audience. That's public speaking. Radio interviews is public speaking. Creating a training program on video or audio, that's public speaking. Interviewing other people and being the interviewer. Creating training programs, again. Serious speaking, humorous speaking. Involving your audience on various levels. Performing, you know, doing your thing and having fun. It's all about being part of that audience as far as the audience is concerned. So it's not about you, like we were hearing from Tony a while ago. That's so absolutely true. This is not about you. This is about the audience. So why am I talking about me? As an example for you. Because I want you to find in all of these various iterations of what speaking is, the ones that resonate with you and say, oh, well, I do that. And I want to do that, and I don't want to do that. And just look at it and think, gosh, I didn't realize there were that many ways of being a public speaker. Well, there are, and they're all available to you. Sometimes I bring my guitar into my keynotes and, you know, blend that, and it becomes a very fun thing. But every speech you give Every audience you address, you're looking at all of them, they're only looking at you. For the audience member, it's always one-to-one. Think of that. You're looking at 1,000 or however many people, and that person and you are the only ones having that dialogue. So when you can think like they think, and make sure you don't stay focused only on one person, you relate to all the different personalities and orientations in the audience, then you're going to be much more powerful as a speaker. Because they want to know, not what did you say, but what does it mean to me, right? And it's helpful to write WTMTY right up at the top of your speech notes if you have speech notes. And let that be a reminder to you every time you look at your notes. What this means to you is, and when you see it, say it. So whatever you've been talking about, say what this means to you, Simon, is this can be done in Belgium. This can be done in Brussels itself. This can be done in France or in the state where you were conceived, Texas. You know, so you relate to the people, right, to the individuals. And you'll get the standing ovations and have the fun that you're seeking. So when I was in China, I did a series of tours of China. From 2015 to 2019, I did 19 separate round trips from the USA to China and back. And each time I would go to 4 cities when I was over there and speak to thousands and thousands of people through an interpreter for 4 to 6 hours a day, which was quite daunting at first, but then I figured out how to make it fun and make it work, and it got better and better. And invariably, the people would come to me at the end of the speech and ask questions. Now, in China, they don't ask questions during. You could say, okay, now we're open for questions. Who has the first question? Nobody. It's against the law of good manners to ask a question. Why? Because you're interrupting the brilliant master that's up on the stage. And even though they're asking you to ask them a question, you don't do it. You watch them like a TV show. And then at the end, you rush up to them and say, I have a question. Where were you when I needed you? Right? So this is what they would get. They would say, Master, how do I become great speaker? And I thought about that. You know, I could talk about speaking techniques and all that all day long. But what are they really asking? Well, first off, they're asking the wrong question, right? How do I become a great speaker? What do you want for your own life? Let's talk about that. And a lot of times the questions you get will be people trying to be nice to you. Well, let's ask him about how do you find a publisher? And that'll be a good thing because he already knows how to answer that. No, ask me what you want to know. I want to solve a problem. I want to be of value. So, you know, when they said that, I thought about it for a while, and finally I came up with an answer. Here's how you become a great speaker. And this is the truth. This is not sarcasm. Become a great person and then say, okay, I'll speak. They said, well, but no. I mean, should I button my coat or not? Should I, you know, where do I stand? Eye contact, how do I do that? What gesture should I use? Are you kidding me? You know, all of those are, show me the parts of the automobile instead of let's go for a drive. I don't want to look at the parts of the automobile. I want to know where you want to go. And maybe the car's not the best way. Today, let's take motorcycles. Or it's that close we could walk. And the weather's good. You know, in other words, the answer is not necessarily the thing that they're seeking through the question. A lot of times you got to help upgrade the question itself. One time years ago, Peter Drucker, I'll get back to that. Peter Drucker was speaking in Chicago. I was in his audience. And he's known as the creator of modern at the time, management of people, management techniques. And he's passed away, but Drucker was given a speech in Chicago. I was in the audience, and a guy in the audience asked a question. And he looked at him and he said, that's not the question you should be asking. That's the first time in my life I'd ever seen anybody do that. And I thought, whoa, that's gutsy. But it absolutely was what needed to be said. Because the person asking the question was asking about a superficial thing when there was a fundamental issue that should have been addressed first. And he said, that's not the question you should be wondering about. It's the question behind that question and why that matters. That's what we want to talk about. And the person agreed with him, right? So, become a great person, agree to give speeches. This is me, 1977. It is. I mean, check it out. That's me? Are you kidding? Yeah, where'd all the hair go? Well, 1977, I was a motivational speaker. I just started my business after all those years of doing training and working for other people. And my message, this was a talk that I gave at the National Speakers Convention in Louisville, Kentucky. My message was, become the kind of person who would achieve your goals, and you get the goals anyway. In other words, don't just focus on getting to Austin, Texas. Focus on the reason you're going to Austin, Texas, and get yourself aligned with that. So when you get there, you didn't just arrive in Austin, you feel like you're home. So think about the future you want and then approach it that way. So there's two ways you can approach your goals. One is as an arrow, shooting at your target. In which case, all the energy, all the initiative, all the accuracy has to come from you. So it's all on you, right? And you either hit it or you miss it. Well, you've got to do that. You and I have to work toward our goals, whatever our goals are, diligently in order to earn the right to have that outcome, right? But there's another way. Become a magnet for what you want. In other words, don't just shoot at it, attract it to you so that what you are seeking starts seeking you. Does that make sense? Because if you become the kind of person they would like to have on their radio show, they will invite you onto the radio show once they know you're available. If you become the kind of speaker they would love to work with, they will put you high in the ranking on their website so that when they go to eWomen Speakers Network, they will find you early on. Why? Because you're so easy to work with. Because you've got your own website well organized, easy to navigate. You've got a bureau-friendly version of that, which means for speakers bureaus, they don't want people contacting you. They want you contacting them. So you put one without the contact information up, put it together so that a speakers bureau can send a link to that page or site or whatever, and it leads them back to them and they book the gig, right? So isn't she adorable? Become a magnet for what you want. See, the two things to work on, the message and the messenger. You're the messenger, obviously. If you get really, really good at creating a speech and you craft a performance that is just world class, what you will have is a good speech. That's it. A good speech. It's like a songwriter has a good song. Well, I'm a songwriter, and years ago in Little Rock, Arkansas, I was playing at Steak and Ale restaurant in the Jolly Ox pub, playing my guitar and singing, and I wrote a song about motorcycling, because I love motorcycles, called Riding Free, and I recorded it in a local studio, and the guy there said, you need to take this to Sun Records in Memphis, Tennessee, where Elvis and Johnny Cash and all these people came from, and let them hear it. And I thought, well, that's cool. So he sent it on my behalf. And then I went to Memphis. And I walked into the executive's office and sat down. And he said, that's a good song. What else do you have? And I said, that's kind of it. I mean, I can sing a lot of songs, but that's the only one I've written. He said, oh. He said, well, Jim, we don't need good songs, we need good songwriters. So we don't need good speeches only, we need good speakers. And if you work on the messenger and you keep making yourself better and better and better, more appealing, more professional, more accommodating and valuable to your audience, then you're going to be in demand for a career. If you get one speech really put together beautifully, you're going to have to give that one speech for the rest of your life. It's one speech. It's not, success as a speaker is not in the speech. It's in the source and how he or she commits to helping that audience every time. Okay? That makes sense? All right. Become the person who would attract the results you seek. Interesting little piece of trivia. This coffee mug, I don't have one of those. I have no idea who does. I found this on the web. Somebody else put me on a mug and markets it. And I thought, well, I like the way that looks, so I just captured the image and I use it myself. But that's the thing. When your message is valuable enough, other people are going to start echoing, and they're going to sing your song for you, and they're going to want to cover it. So my tour in China was just phenomenal and went on for 5 years, and then COVID hit and everything shut down and couldn't go anywhere without quarantine and all that, so it all dried up overnight. But consider, they came to me to get me to become a personality in China in 2015, at a point in my career where most speakers would think they had pretty much peaked and they were plateaued now. Mine took off like a rocket straight uphill. I ended up doing 23 major cities and all those hundreds of thousands of people over there. 4 books translated into Mandarin. And they treated me like a god, not like a rock star. Rock stars get nice treatment. I was treated like the person who had created Asia. Wow. When I'd go into a hotel 5-room suite, just me, 5-room suite, they'd pick me up in a Rolls Royce. At the end, they would pay me in $100 bills, stacks. Whoa. Stacks. I declared it when I came through custom, of course. But, oh my gosh, to be traveling with $20,000, $30,000 at a time is a bit unnerving. Because you look at everybody like, does he know? Or does she, is that a gun? No, what? Right? So consider this. Every time you're up here, you're not alone. Every single one of them wants you to do well. They do. They're pulling for you. Even if they don't like you. He's a jerk, but I hope he has a good speech today. Right? Even if that were the case, they're pulling for you. So, be the kind of person they hope you are. Be the kind of person, the kind of professional, the kind of speaker, the kind of co-worker they hope you are. And if you do that, you'll get more requests. And more people will be telling your story to their market, their audience. And so I suggest that since almost everybody on earth underestimates what they're capable of, that you really ought to expect more from yourself. Take the goals, the fondest, biggest, most exciting dreams you have, and kick them up 2 notches. And even that's going to be an underestimation probably, but think much, much bigger, because what you expect determines what you get ready for. See, if you don't think a bus is coming, you're not going to go to the bus stop. If you're going to an event and you expect there's going to be a formal gala, you're going to pack an evening gown or a tuxedo. If you don't expect that, you'll take business casual, right? So what we expect from ourselves and from our career and from our life determines what we get ready for. Well, what does that mean, get ready for? Well, I started taking Mandarin lessons after I realized I had a bigger opportunity than I had ever considered, right? I went to a speech coach years ago when I realized I was going to become president of the National Speakers Association. I went to a speech coach and spent $10,000 with him just working on my signature stories, my primary stories that I used in most of my presentations, because we tend to find a few stories that, or vignettes, little bits, modules in our speeches that really work with people. And those can be used for sales or for leadership or communication or couples or, whatever, for any number of different purposes. So those we ought to really, really work on. And so I went to a man named Ron Arden, and he was a former theater director, and he was a speech coach. And so I spent $10,000 working with him. And one day I was with Ron, and I was doing one of my signature stories, and he said, "Stop it." I said, "What?" And he was scolding me. Now, a grown man, I was president of the National Speakers Association already. And he said, "Stop it." And I said, "Stop what?" Because now I'm acting like a 5-year-old that got caught, right? Stop what? And he said, "Stop acting like a cub reporter who just was handed the news to read." I said, "Well," he said, "Yes, you do." I said, "Well, yes, you do, and stop it." I said, "What's your point?" He said, "Jim, are you in the Speaker Hall of Fame?" "Yeah." "Are you president of the National Speakers Association?" "Yes, as a matter of fact, I am." "Have you written a number of books?" "Yeah." "Have you spoken in all 50 U.S. states?" "Uh-huh." "Have you been around the world on lecture tours a couple of times? Have you received that?" And I said, "Yeah, I have." He said, "So stop acting like you're not the source." He said, "If you believe it so, say it with conviction." "Yes, sir." And I mean, that was a big wake-up call for me, because I was over 50 years old and pretty much had reached a level that you'd think I was comfortable with myself, but I was still, in many cases, reporting what I had to say as if they say, or I've heard, or as many people would tell you, instead of just saying, "This is true." How do I know it's true? Well, in my opinion, it's true, without saying, "and my opinion counts." What he was saying is that your opinion does count, so if you tell me something with conviction, I'm going to take it to heart. I'll tell you somebody who does that really well. My friend Brian Tracy. When Brian Tracy says, "Good morning, it's 8 o'clock," he says it like, if you don't believe that, you should probably be put to sleep. Because you're just not worthy of taking up space anymore, because this is an eternal truth. For heaven's sakes, it's morning, it's 8 o'clock. Wow. Man, changed my life. No, Brian couldn't change your life. Only you could do that. But Brian speaks with such conviction, you just feel like, whoa, well, there's something I didn't know before. I'm going to go out and act on that, right? All right, so expect more from yourself. What if you don't expect much from yourself? Bless you, what if you don't think you're that big of a deal? Well, I didn't. Wow. 200 pounds, 1974, Little Rock, Arkansas, 5 pounds worth of mustache. And I was working as a clerk at the Little Rock, Arkansas Housing Authority for $525 a month. I had no college degree, no money in the bank, no connections in the community. My parents were working class folks. I had never excelled in school, academically or athletically. I didn't know any people who had money. I had a new wife and baby at home, and I'm working as an assistant to a man who doesn't need help, Bob Moore, and he was bored, and I was his helper. So every day I would sit there and thumb through books on urban renewal and wait for something valuable that I had to do, and rarely got an assignment. I had some work, but not much. Government job, right? So in the next room one day, I heard Earl Nightingale on the radio. Earl Nightingale was considered the dean of personal motivation. He was on 900 radio stations around the world back then. So this was 1972. And that day on the radio in the next room, I heard him say, if you will spend 1 hour extra every day studying the field you've chosen, In 5 years or less, you're going to be a national expert on that. And I did the math. Hour a day, 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, 5 years, 1,250 hours. You study one subject exclusively, a narrow subject, not a broad one. Study a narrow subject for that much time, you will be a leading authority. Or at least you'll be comfortable sitting with the leading authorities and not feeling like an outsider, right? So I said, okay, what do I want to do? Well, it's not urban renewal. And an hour a day, I'm a government clerk, I got 8 hours a day. I could probably do this by Thursday, you know? So what do I want to do? I didn't know. I really didn't know. And then it hit me, I want to do what he does. Well, I didn't know what he does. I just knew somehow I want to do what the guy on the radio does. I want to help people grow. Problem. If I was building a career as a professional speaker, I was missing 2 primary ingredients. Item 1, I had never given a speech. Item 2, I had nothing to say. So, you know, what are my fees going to be? I don't know, however much I can pay them, right? So I said, all right, I'm going to take him at his word and become fanatically dedicated to studying personal development. So I did for 5 years, literally 5 years, every day, without fail. I was listening to recordings of Earl Nightingale. And I mean, to the point that I lost some friends over it. They'd think, oh God, here comes Mr. Motivator. You know, let's go do something else. That's okay. We didn't not be friends anymore. They just drifted away because their interests and mine no longer matched. I found new friends that were really into this. And boy, we were rocket fuel for each other. Have you read this? No. Let me see. Ooh, that's a great book. I'll read that, you know. So I'm reading Think and Grow Rich, How to Win Friends and Influence People, The Power of Positive Thinking. You know, all the classics, all the primary books in that field. And I'm listening to Earl every day, and my life starts changing. Not only my circle of friends, but my relationship with people at work. And I start getting promotions at work and raises. And then they elected me president of the Employees Association at the Housing Authority. I didn't even know they had one. And I started meeting with the executive director and getting free parking for people and organizing events and doing things that you would hope that the president of the Employees Association would do. And that got me more popular. Then I joined the JCs, the Junior Chamber of Commerce. Now, the JCs were at that time huge, 356,000 members around the nation. And I joined a local chapter in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1973. And I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But 74, this is 2 years after the radio broadcast, I was so into this that I left the Housing Authority and went to work selling Earl Nightingale's recordings door to door to businesses in Little Rock. 1974. Fast forward, 1984. I'm a full-time speaker. I've moved to California. I live in La Jolla by the beach, partners with a college professor, Dr. Tony Alessandra, who's still my best friend today. And phone rings, and I pick it up, and it's Earl Nightingale, the Earl Nightingale. And I didn't know what to say. He said, may I speak to Jim Cathcart? And which means this is he, how may I help you? And he said, I just read an article of yours that would make a good audio program. And I said, well, sir, that article is an audio program. He said, send it to me, I publish those. I said, believe me, I know. So I sent it to him, and he said, yep, we'll take it. And he published Relationship Strategies for Dealing with the Differences in People in 1984. And in 1984 and 1985, his company sold $3.5 million worth of that album worldwide. That's the first audio album ever widely published on the subject of personality types. Today, everybody's got something on personality types. But that was 1984 and 85, and that puppy went viral. Wow. Wow. 1972, I heard him on the radio. 1974, I'm selling his tapes, cassettes. 1984, he's selling mine. He's selling mine. Are you kidding? Did I call and lobby and sell him on? No, he called me. Hello. I became a magnet for what I wanted. See, the world asks you all the time, what do you want? Whether it's a barista, welcome to Starbucks, what do you want, right? Or ding dong, hello, what do you want? Phone rings. Hi, who are you? What do you want? Everywhere we go, Santa says, what do you want? The genie in the bottle says, 3 wishes, what do you want? If you don't know, you don't get it. If you don't know what you want, you don't get what you want. You know what you do get? What somebody else wants by default. So if you don't clarify what you want, you're going to get what somebody else wants. Not my favorite approach. Dan Burris, a futurist friend of mine, he says, people don't know what they want. If they don't know what's possible, they're going to ask for too little. That's the thing. See, when I do a program called Going Pro, where I take people through an 8-week process. And the whole point of that is when you say, I'm going to be a professional, all the rules change for you. When you say, I'm going pro, it's no longer okay to be casual about how you do the things. You need to be intentional about how you do things. You need to become more valuable to the people you're serving, more intentional in what you do, more disciplined in the way you do it, more accountable in the ways that you do it, and more honorable in the way that you do it. VIDAH, valuable, intentional, disciplined, accountable, and honorable. So when you say, this is what I want, and the rules change for you, now it's getting serious, then going pro means starting with this question. Telling yourself clearly, what do you specifically want? What does that look like? All right? And then, what is success to you? Is it money? Well, that's certainly part of it, but money's a pretty lousy goal because money's just stuff. Money's not the purpose of business. It's a product of business. But here's a way to think about money. Money is to a business, whether it's a single person practice or an enterprise, money is to a business as blood is to a body. Without blood, the body dies. It's not the purpose of the body. Blood's not the purpose of your body. Okay? Without money, the business dies. It's not the purpose of the business. It's a product of the business. The purpose of the business is doing whatever it is you do that makes the world a better place somehow for someone for a stated time. Okay? So, thinking about what is success? Well, for some people, success is lifestyle. It's doing exciting things, going to wonderful places. For some people, it's serving on important boards, things like that. For whatever. When you look out at the future you see tells you what kind of person you're going to need to be. So when you think about your dreams and your goals, ask yourself, what kind of person would have that, achieve that, thrive in that, be able to stay there, not just arrive there, own it, right? Be worthy of it. So, how much work do you want to do? This is my group, the Heartbreak Hiking Fools. In Westlake Village, by the way. Yeah. Look at this. Now, this is Taylor Swift, right there, on the 1989 World Tour. It was not done in 89. She was born in 89. So this was done in 2015. How's the turnout? Not too shabby, okay? Now, I want you to consider this. The 7-month tour that she did in 2015 is the highest grossing, most attended tour she ever did, mobilizing 250,000 fans. No, 2,278,000 fans and $250 million in revenue. Successful? Mm-hmm. Yeah, you think? Right? Now let's consider for a minute. How was she able to pull that off? Why did she succeed on that level? The answer is obvious. She's cute. No, but she is cute, right? Okay. Well, then it's because she's a good songwriter. No, but she's a good songwriter. Well, it's because she's a good singer and performer. No, that's not enough. And she is a good singer and performer. You know why they were able to do that? Somebody, maybe her, maybe someone else, decided we're going for all of it. We're going to do the whole thing. No, we're not going to just get songs #1 on the charts. We're going to own this. We're going to take over that segment of the world for a while. Somebody had goals that big, because you never succeed by mistake. On the back of High Rev, I've got a very profound statement right at the top. Success is not normal. You can't be what mom and dad would absolutely approve of and automatically succeed. You got to be willing to be the mutant in the room, willing to go beyond what's reasonable for normal people if you want to go for something huge. Now, most of us don't have goals that big. Most of us are way more reasonable with our goals. Here's what I do in going pro, is I have people choose early on, what are you shooting for? You want to be competent? That'll get you in the game. You can get in the door if you're competent. Excellent? That means that other people say, whoa, she's really good, right? Mastery? That's where you're not only excellent, but people say, there you go. That's the way it looks once you've arrived, right? Leading authority, they start quoting you and deferring to you and calling you and asking your advice. Celebrity, you're mentioned everywhere. Star, you're obviously included in the top realms when they're talking about the people in your field. Superstar, Taylor Swift, going back over the years, the Beatles, Elvis, you know, name your person. But everyone in this room is capable, if they choose, of hitting every one of those categories if you want to. I play guitar and sing. I'm a songwriter. I do pretty well at it, but I'm competent and I'm cool with that. I am. I don't want to work so hard at it that I become excellent or achieve mastery, because I've got other things to do. I love making music and performing for people, but I'm not going to dedicate myself to it like I have to the speaking profession, to where I can move to the higher levels. So I'm totally good with that, right? Leading authority is what I considered Earl Nightingale to be, although he's also a celebrity. I said, I want to do what Nightingale does. I want to be the guy they're quoting. I want to be the person they turn to and say, look, you really get it, how this works. Explain this to me, please, right? I've occasionally been a celebrity, as you saw in those pictures, and occasionally a star, never a superstar. But that's because I didn't want those things badly enough to pay the price to get there. You know, looking at that hiking hill, how hard do you want to work? Well, on this, I'll work hard, but I'm not going for all that, because you know what those top two require? Everything you have. Every minute of your life, every cell in your being, you got to be so dedicated to that, there's no other you, right? But down at these levels, you can have a life. You can have like casual friends. Oh my gosh, you can have a free evening once in a while, right? So choose the level you aspire to, and then rewrite your goals, and you'll be much more focused on it. And don't worry about whether you're worthy. You're worthy. Trust me. You're breathing, you're thinking, you're speaking out loud, you're worthy. There may be a lot of development of skills between you and it, but you're worthy. The Acorn Principle, when I wrote that, the whole idea was to make this a self-guided tour of what makes you who you are. And it became an international bestseller. But the point of the Acorn Principle is you've already got the seed in you for phenomenal things. And your fastest and best growth is going to come from what you already are. Acorns cannot become spruce or pine, but they can be magnificent oaks. But not if they're trying to be a redwood, right? So the purpose of what you do, the purpose of what I do, the purpose of what everybody does should be, I think, clearly stated around this idea. Making life better for people. There ought to be, every person we work with ought to have a definition in their head and heart of how they make the world better for somebody and be able to articulate that. I used to have a mission statement in my office. Our mission is to develop and effectively market an ever-improving line of top-quality products and services designed to enhance business people's, just wait for it, designed to enhance business people's effectiveness in the areas of sales, management, leadership, and communication. Whoopee. Well, that would get you an A in mission statement class. It would. That's a really well-written mission. And I asked Susie, my personal assistant, years ago, what's our mission? She said, it's that thing that hangs over the copier. Yeah, but what are the words? Oh, I don't know, it's too long. Aha, right? Wake up call for the boss. So we sat down, just small staff, and we recrafted our mission statement. And the new mission statement said this: our mission is to make life better for people profitably. Why profitably? Because if you don't profit, you can't keep doing it. You have to stop. And profit's an honorable thing, not a selfish thing, right? So to make life better for people profitably, and I asked every person in my office, how do you make life better for people profitably? Well, I don't do, what I do goes to him and he does this with it. And if you didn't, he couldn't. So let's think that through. How does that affect him and how he does his work, and her and how she does hers? And so they would say, really, do we have to? Yes, we do. And I would walk them through this thought process until it was so clear to them they could say it in their own words without any effort. And once they had that, see, if everyone knows why they're doing what they do and how it matters to others, they get better at doing it, right? So, quick story, and going back to the inspiration of Tom yesterday. And Tom, thank you for those touching stories about Santa and the others. I was in Malaysia. I had done a year-long academy in China where several people paid very high fees to be with me for a year, 4 different times, for 3 days at a time, on a Yangtze River cruise and a mountain resort and other places around China. And then we had a big celebration event in Penang, Malaysia at the end of the year. And they all came together, and we would spend our days in the classrooms or on the beach or doing something. And then we would go to dinner together, like last night on the rooftop. We went, instead, in Malaysia, we went to a fishing village where there were all kinds of shops and tourist trap, basically, but a nice one. And so we're wandering through this place, and I've got the students with me, and they call me master, teacher, which is a little hard to bear, but still, that was their custom. So we're walking along, and we see beggars from time to time, and I would put some money in their hat and smile at them and walk on. And I saw this guy right here, Halif. Now, if you'll notice, Halif is wearing sweatpants, and they're ragged. They got holes in them. If you were there in person, you would notice this is an artificial leg. So the other leg's regular, but this one's artificial. And he's wearing a dirty t-shirt, and he's sitting in the dirt, and he's playing the guitar and singing for tips. And so we walk along, and I put some money in his hat, and he looks up and smiles at me and says, hello. He speaks English. And I said, hey, do you know any American songs? He said, I know Hotel California. I said, well, cool. I said, can I sing it with you? And he said, sure. So, now I'm with my entourage, right? And I'm talking to this beggar, and they're looking at each other like, no, he shouldn't be doing that. No, master should not be engaging with these unclean people. So, I sit down in the dirt next to Halif, and they go, and he's rummaging through his papers to find Hotel California. And I said, I play and sing back home. And he said, do you want to play? And I said, well, sure. So he hands me his guitar. So, on a dark desert highway, cool wind in my hair, and I start playing Hotel California. He's singing harmony. The guy's good. And so we're doing a fun little thing, and he starts playing percussion on his hollow leg. And it's just as natural as if that was bongos he had brought. I mean, there's nothing pretentious about that or odd. He's into the music. And we're sitting there and we do the song, and a crowd had gathered, and they're all putting tips in his hat, so he's getting more and more money, and that's good. And then at the end we get a big applause, and then I give him a hug, and they're just, they're horrified that I'm touching this unclean man. And so we're posing for selfies and just having a great time. And we walk away, and my translator, Kitty, she's not in the photo, Kitty says to me, Jim, she says, why did you do that? I said, it was fun. She said, yeah, but why did you, why? I said, well, Kitty, think like him for a minute. Every day, he sits there in the dirt with one leg missing, and he plays the guitar and hopes that somebody is going to give him a little bit of money, and he usually doesn't get much. And everybody he talks to is up there, and they're looking down at him. And they're not just looking down at him physically, they're looking down at him emotionally. They think he is less than them. And every day he goes home feeling small and feeling worthless and just trying to scrape by. He gave me a good smile, and he's a fellow musician. And so I sat down with my equal, and I played the guitar, and we sang a song together. I said, how long do you think it will be before he forgets this? She said, he'll never forget this. I said, neither will I. I wanted to give him a minute of dignity, a minute of being completely accepted and equal and unjudged by anybody else, and just use the music as our mutual interest and have some fun. I said, now here's the thing, and I'm talking to our group at this point. I said, every one of you could do this every day. Doesn't cost anything, doesn't take any intellect, doesn't take any preparation. All you've got to do is acknowledge the existence of the other person and treat them with dignity. Every one of us can make the world better every single day. And boy, you could hear a pin drop at that point, because they're all thinking, he's right. Shame on me. I've missed so many opportunities to do that. So, here's the daily question. I want you to ask yourself this question as often as you can think of it. How would the person I'd like to be, the better me, the more advanced, the more mature, the more evolved version of me, how would that person do the things I'm about to do? How would that's in my book, The Acorn Principle. How would the person I'd like to be do the things I'm about to do? Now, why is that important? You say, well, I would like to be Mark Victor Hansen. I'd like to be Sharon Lecter. I'd like to be whoever. Well, fine, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the future you. How would the future you do the things you're about to do? And when you think that way, you make little microscopic upgrades all along the way, and you become more and more of that future you. A lot of people talk about the importance of change. I think when we're thinking about it personally, we need to shift our verbiage and say, I'm not interested in changing, I'm interested in evolving. Because evolving is being more of you that you're capable of on a higher level. Whereas changing might be trying to get an acorn to become a giant redwood. Not going to work, right? So, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Cathcart, Hall of Fame speaker. Thank you, Jim.
My pleasure.
That was awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Have a seat.
I'll do it. I'll do it.
All right. Well, Jim, you just delivered a great speech here, as you do everywhere all around the world. Workshops, keynotes, digitally. I think one of the things that's impressed me the most as I've followed you the last few years is one thing I learned yesterday in the car with you is you shared the fact that when the internet came out in the early 90s, you were ready with so much content. One thing we talked about this weekend is content creation plus syndication equals monetization.
Good.
And so many speakers don't have a content creation strategy. You had that, and you continue to lead in that space. Talk to me a little bit about content creation for speakers, but also what should a 3 to 5 year strategy be?
Content creation needs to come from the spirit that's waiting to be born in you. In other words, think about the oak. Think like an oak, not like an acorn. Think like an acorn, you remain an acorn, you become squirrel food. Think like an oak, you could populate the world with acorns for millions of years. So there's so many answers available. I'm narrowing it down right now. But I want to go back to what you said a moment ago.
Your strategy too.
Yeah. The reason I was ready when the internet was announced to the normal people like us was because I had declared 1992 as the year of the Bureau in my office, and we repurposed and restructured everything we did as a speaker's office to be highly compatible with the way speakers bureaus operated. And virtually every major speakers bureau in America immediately embraced me as one of their talents, not because I was a killer good speaker, because I was so easy to work with, and everything I had was configured the way their business was configured. So it was so easy to sell Jim, and I ended up getting 80% of my business for a while from speakers bureaus because I had retooled everything. So 1995-ish comes around, and they say, hey, there's this thing called the web, the World Wide Web, and you can have a web page, not a website, a web page. And so people were getting web pages.
Yeah.
Well, I had created an agent's handbook for selling Jim Cathcart. And it had frequently asked questions, it had a bio, it had pictures, it had a breakdown of each of my major speech topics, it had client testimonials, it had a list of all my clients, which is 3,300 different clients over the years. And I just gave it to a tech person, and they put it up, and my first web page was a robust website. And the people I was going up against had literally a page, like a billboard, right?
What do you think is the future? Because we're talking about, I know we've talked about your content because you have hundreds and hundreds of hours in the studio, both in English and in Mandarin.
Yeah.
So,
well, Mandarin subtitles.
Yeah, Mandarin subtitles, but they're professionally done.
Yeah,
They're basically ready to go. Going back to Earl Nightingale's model, seeing that with the cassette tapes, because I had the university in my car as well, and the audio tapes, where do you see it heading now? Because the internet brought us so far, but content syndication continues to evolve. What advice would you give?
But there's another factor that's even more powerful, and that is when I was doing all that with Earl Nightingale, there was no self-improvement section in a bookstore.
Yeah, it wasn't
and
there
were maybe 12, 15 books available somewhere on the subject of how to succeed, and everything else was just, non-personal success related. And so I had to, with my colleagues, help create the field of personal development, and we did what became known in retrospect as the human potential movement. So we created a big groundswell of interest around goal setting, personal development, interpersonal communication, success skills, soft skills, things like that. So today, that's available in your phone right here. You can, find me between now and the next hour 100 people that are providers in that field. Done. Yeah. Anybody can do that. Okay, so what do you do when it's everywhere? You got to stand out of the noise. You've got to be the sound that is piercing all that noise, and they hear you. And the way you do that is to be absolutely clear on what you want. What do you want? What are you trying to say? What are you trying to do? Why does it matter? Who cares about it? Right? And the more you isolate that, the more you can state and communicate your message in such a way that you reach through it all.
Okay.
But there are three things you need. You need a message, you need a market, and you need mileage.
Yeah.
Okay? And mileage also involves media. So message, get clear on your message. How does it help people and make their life better? Second, who is the market? Are you working with the Automotive Transmission Rebuilders Association? Are you working with everybody in the automotive industry? Are you working with insurance? You're working with parents? What are you working with? So get very clear on the markets you're going after. Well, I want to go after all markets. Then you might as well give up because you're not targeted enough to get anywhere.
Right.
So isolate your market. And then there's a market penetration and permeation strategy around that. But the next one is media and mileage. Media would be have it in a book form, have it in an audio form, have it in an app, have it on a YouTube channel, have it in a number of bite-sized little lessons as well as main courses, have a certification process, have assessments that will guide people to which part they ought to study next and give them a certificate of completion at the end. And then have an academy, and then have a mentorship program like my Going Pro, or have,
have content,
on and on.
Bite-sized content that you
and get out there and get in front of people in every context. Remember all those slides? Every context of speaking you can get into, show up,
create it,
and endure the pain. In other words, show up at a meeting where the guy forgot to send out the announcement and he's the only one there.
Yeah.
Drove 130 miles for that one way.
And then go live. Go live and do it anyway, right?
That's right.
Go,
I did.
Go
I
live
said,
and
all
do
right,
it anyway.
sit down, we're going to do it. And I did that training that night for one guy, and that was before we could go live.
Here's a question I get a lot, because keynote speakers, a lot of times you don't realize you've got one or two really good keynotes, and if you've keynoted somewhere in the corporate space, they're not going to have you back for the next few years, even if you were great, even if you were a 10 out of 10, because they're going to give their organization, their conference attendees variety. So talk to me a little bit about, because you've seemed to monetize all this other things, the media and the mileage figured out. What are some of the ancillary things of workshops?
Well, first thing I do is I look at each engagement as a problem-solving opportunity for them. So I'm there to solve one of their problems. It might be entertainment, just make their day more joyful. That solved that problem. Or it might be to teach them to be better at sales. So I started my first gig as a speaker after I left the JC's headquarters was a Mass Mutual agency in Tulsa, and they brought me in to do a seminar on goal setting. And afterwards, the general agent said, "Jim, that was really good and I like it. Could you do anything for the agents and their spouses about balancing, business and home life and improving their relationships?" Yes, as a matter of fact, I do.
Kind of a little pastoral thing right there.
So
right?
I did that, right? And at the JC's, I was in charge of leadership training, which is management and supervision leadership.
My dad was at JC, by the way.
Good. And in Oklahoma?
Yep. In Tulsa,
In Tulsa, where the national headquarters was.
Exactly.
So anyway, I had sales and interpersonal communication, self-development. So with this agency, I ended up full-time contract. He said, leave the JC's, move in with us. We'll give you a corner office in our penthouse suite. He said, I want you to be my confidant, and I want you to coach and train my agents, and I want you to be here as often as you can while you build your speaking career. I said, I don't want a career in insurance. He said, I know. Well, as a result of that, I had a penthouse office with a full complement of services for 6 years for this much expense. Nice. And our success in that agency caused me to be booked by 36 other Massachusetts mutual agencies, which led to the $1 Million Roundtable, the Life Insurance Marketing Research Association, the General Agents and Managers Association, and Prudential and New York Life and Bankers Life and all over. And then the American Bankers Association hired me for 6 years to be on their executive faculty. I mean, it just...
You stay busy. Well, you've always provided so much value, and I want to have you back on the Michael D. Show because everybody loves you every time you come. But I'm going to take a couple questions from the crowd because we've got time.
Okay.
And then simply what I'm going to do, shout out your question when I call on you, and then I'll repeat the question for the video. So who's got a question for Jim?
And by the way, a while ago I had a QR code on the screen.
We'll make sure we get to that.
I want to make sure that everybody
Well,
sees it.
let's talk about it real quick because before you go, you're offering something very special. Tell us what it is.
I have put together 27 videos into what I call a professional presentation series. And what it is about 10 lessons that I created while in China. So it's got me in English with subtitles in Mandarin, but it's
so they can learn Chinese on their part time.
If you want to, you can. But it's about storytelling. It's about how do you handle, what are you responsible for when they hire you to be their speaker?
Okay.
So I have a service commitment that I send to people.
All the basic things. It's really a checklist and a resource of what they're going to need.
And I've got the actual keynote of my speech to Toastmasters in August of 2022 to 1,000 people. I've got the keynote I delivered years ago when I was president of the National Speakers Association. I've got how to receive an award. I've got how to, all kinds of details on how do you do the things speakers have to do.
And you normally sell it for $5,000, right?
No, I normally sell that one for $997, so $1,000. Okay. And for this group, if you go to that QR code today,
we'll put it back up on the screen.
You can get it today for $297.
So thank you, Jim. That's really sweet of you. That's just really precious of you. So we'll ask Sarah to put that back up.
And if any of you enroll in the Going Pro program, that'll apply toward it, and so it'll discount the cost of Going Pro by that much.
Was that the last slide she needs to pull up? Oh, there it is. Is that it right there? Okay,
so just capture that QR code.
Since we're going to edit this, and you're also part of the Michael D. podcast, the Michael D. Show, we're going to edit parts of this and use bits and pieces of it.
And you can also go to that website down there. So either way.
Awesome, awesome.
Good.
Well, I'm going to take we've got time for 2 questions. And was this helpful today? Was this good or what? Yeah?
Good.
Wow. Good. It's great to have Jeff Crilly here on his day off. You know what Jeff Crilly does on his day off? He hangs out at the office, baby. That's right. I'm telling you what. Who's got a quick question for Jim? Raise your hand. Okay, Roy?
Yeah.
Okay, we got it.
That's cool. You mentioned the MDRT. I've been a part of them for years as a top of the table member. When were you speaking with them, and how did you get involved with MDRT? Was it through the Mass Mutual or Mass? Which company was that?
Okay, I had become a very popular keynoter throughout the insurance industry. So I'd spoken for the General Agents and Managers Association at their LAMP meeting, Life Agency Management Program. I'd spoken for LIMRA. I'd spoken for, all the different groups and different companies around the world, and spoken in Europe and so forth. And I got a call from MDRT, and they said, $1 Million Roundtable. They said, we want you on the main platform as the opening speaker in Atlanta in the 1990s.
Oh, cool.
And so I came, and Bella Caroli was the guy who was the coach of the U.S. gymnastics team.
Yeah.
And we at that time were winning gold medals and all that. And Olga Korbut and Nadia Comaneci and all those were big names at the time. Well, he did an opening session and had the kids performing in front of the MDRT, and then the next speaker was me.
Yeah.
And so I came on and did it and got a standing ovation, and that was a very cool experience.
That's really awesome.
It also got me booked all over the world.
Yeah, so it's a great platform. So
yeah, so we thank you for that valuable resource. Sarah.
Thank you. And I loved that part before when someone said, if you don't get invited on someone else's stage, create your own. And that's really what I've done in New Zealand, which has been really awesome. And I'd love to know what your advice would be around doing that and then getting invited on other people's stages.
Getting invited to what?
Other people's stages.
Okay.
Okay, leveraging your own events then to get invited on. Okay.
Yeah. Well, first off, when you're running your own event, you get to choose who comes.
Yeah.
So if I were doing an event here today and I were doing it to perpetuate my keynote speeches, I would have invited a half a dozen local area speakers bureaus, and I would also tell others what the link was so that they could have one of their staff tune in and see me live in front of a group, so that they could say, hey, everybody, you know, any of you interested in booking Jim Cathcart, tune in at X o'clock and be able to see him. I would do that. Another thing
and then you would send them the replay in case they couldn't catch it live as well.
There you go. See, and you do that after. But think of every event as a beginning, never as an end.
Right.
If you think, most people think of them as an end, like when you go to the movies, you go see Top Gun and it's over. You go home. No. Well, no. No, you go see Top Gun.
And 20 years later, you get the sequel.
Well, I'm making this up as I go, but here's the answer to your question. You're the person that produced Top Gun.
Yes.
Okay? So people go to movie theaters all over the world and they see Top Gun. Well, for all the other movies, people just go home.
Right.
For your movie, at the end, they get a special set of outtakes that they can tune into by simply signing up on their way out the door with their email. And so in the end of the email, do you have to record new sections? No. You just take a bunch of outtakes and put them together and put it on a website. And so now you've got everybody's email that's been going to see Top Gun, and you send them this and they're all entertained by that. And it says, by the way, if you like this, you know, we've got a discussion group here on Facebook, and then we've got this and we've got that. And we're going to have another special showing of Top Gun in, say, 2 months, and we're going to be gathering input from the audience all around the world as to what needs to be in the next, in the sequel.
And here's how you do it today. For those of you that have spoken, Sarah and Madison and Roy, you want to get a video testimonial during lunch from those that heard you speak, even if it's 30 seconds, and they're going to say, hey, she was very impactful, he was very great. You need to inquire about having them at your next event. Check them out and research them because they just really did an awesome job at this event yesterday. Yes, and so that's what you do during the break. Was Jim Cathcart awesome? Yeah. So thank you, Jim, for offering this.
You bet.
And here's what I want you to do. Jim and I haven't gotten any pictures yet. So before Jim and I step over here and get some red carpet pictures with Luke, 2 things that we're going to do during the lunch break. And what we're going to do is we're going to break for lunch from 12 to 1. And the food court is not open today on Saturday, but we spoke to Starbucks, and they have soups, sandwiches, and salads, and they have plenty for you. And the thing is, network, have fun, get testimonials, but there's 2 groups I want to address right now. For those of you that are here and were impacted, a lot of you raised your hands about learning more about the children's book. Raise your hand if that intrigued you and you want to learn more about selling books through the children's funnel. Jim's got his hand up too. Tom and I are going to be downstairs, particularly Tom. I'll kind of referee and coordinate traffic, but circle up with Tom. After you grab your Starbucks, find a big circle table in the Hilton lobby and have a little round table there where you can have a 5-minute meeting together, and he'll do 2 or 3 at a time and then move around and get your questions answered. Then let's get you on the calendar and let's talk about it. Let's get you on the calendar this next week, but learn a little more about that. And then Kirk is the tall guy that you can't miss, Captain Kirk in the back here. And he's kind of been behind the scenes, but he's a part of our team selling the next event. How many of you had such a good time here you want to be a part of another one of these? Was this awesome? And you're like, well, I didn't really know what this event was going to be because you didn't tell us. It was super secret. And you showed up, but you're like, now I kind of maybe get it, and I want to be back, right? Yeah. So our next event is February 24th and 25th. And you can get a special rate on that right now. Our rate for the event on the 24th and 25th is $2,500. But Kirk's got a special price for you that if you buy it today, it's greatly reduced, and you can go ahead and lock it in. But then he'll also go ahead and get you scheduled for the speaking, because I've already got people lined up to speak, and I've already got people lined up to be interviewed. Okay, and so there's a lot to offer right there. And so get with Kirk. He'll give you the rundown, and everybody knows Kirk. Same thing. Best place, I think, once you grab a lunch is to kind of fan out. And it's not hard to miss Kirk. And it's not that hard to miss Tom. And once again, I want to apologize for anybody that was locked out earlier. That was my fault, and I apologize. And we'll get with the facility, and we'll get that if we do it, because we're doing another Saturday.